Hey guys, it's Tiny Tom Logan back with another video for you, and today we're finally going to be making the video on the EVGA SRX. Now the SRX is a very high-end board. It's designed for dual Xeons, and I do mean dual Xeons as well because people keep asking me if you can use 3930K and 3930Xs in them. It's dual Xeons only. You need the Xeons for the two CPUs to be run together. It's a massive board, it's HTPX, it's absolutely ginormous. But obviously it's dual socket. Now a lot of people are expecting this to break world records and be the best gaming machine ever. Well, we're going to take a look around the board and stuff, and then what we're going to do is we're actually going to be talking about the performance results and stuff like that in the conclusion, because there's a fair bit that I really do need to talk to you about this board. But just to stay straight off the bat, it's sort of about prices and stuff. I've spoken to EVGA and they're expecting at this moment in time, it may change, but at this moment in time they're expecting this to become available in the UK for around the £500 mark for the board itself. Now the CPUs I've tested on it, the 26660s are around the kind of £1,300, £1,400 mark. And the 2687s are well over 1,500 quid. I think they're about 1,700, 1,800 pound each, because they're the real top end Xeons. And that's each, and you need a pair of these things. So you're talking an immense amount of money before you've really done much else. By the time you've bought the board and the processors and whatever graphics and everything you're going to be running, it's an immense amount of money. But anyway, I'm going to stop talking now, and then we'll move on and talk about the other bits and bobs. Right then, peeps. So, quick look in and around. I'll tell you the system that we used for the testing to start off with, and then we'll have a look at the board. But if you have a look at the main review over on Overclock 3D, we've tested on two separate CPUs. The 26660 and the 2687. One's 2.2 gigahertz, one's 2.9 gigahertz, but then they obviously turbo up a little bit anyway. Dual H100s, then we've got the Phobia G-Silent fans. We've also got 64GB of Corsair Vengeance memory. It's capable of running at 1866, but we'll talk a little bit more about that in a bit. And obviously we're using a Corsair AX 1200 watt with the white braided cable kit. And the test that we did, we also used a 7970, and we use 7970s in all of the motherboard reviews. It's just a reference one, no overclock, nothing mega about it. Now to look at the actual system itself, I have already done an overview, but I'll just skim across what's on the back. We've got 4 USB 2s, PS2 keyboard slot, got a couple of eSATAs, 4 USB 3s, a couple of gigabit Ethernets, a Bluetooth port, an external Cmos clear, and then the audio. The reason why I'm not skimming over it too much or going into the back panel too much is, like I said, because we've already done it in a previous video. But two CPUs, they don't sit level. One sits the right hand side, one sits further down. The left hand side CPU is quad channel, but it's only got 4 DIMM slots. Now EVGA said that was so if you had the SR2 and you upgraded and you had a full bank of memory on your SR2, so 12 lots of memory, you could move it on to this. But not being funny, if you've paid the money for the board, so say 500 quid for the board, because that's at the moment that's the price it's going to be coming in at, say £3,000 on processors, I don't think spending 150, 200 quid on memory is going to be a problem for you. Also, the older memory for the SR2 would have probably been 1.65 volts as well, and most of the memory nowadays, especially the good stuff like this, is running at 1.5 volts. So I don't really see that as an excuse. Now, there is stuff underneath this heatsink. It's a PLX chip and the chipset. I think there would have been room to put it underneath here. They did say that if they had moved it about a bit, they may have lost a PCI Express slot, but there would have been extra room to have been able to have gone down a little bit further with the board. Considering it's so large anyway, I really don't think it would have been too much of an issue. Considering they get to design these boards anyway, I don't really think that rejigging it so that you could have had both CPUs with 4 DIMM slots either side would really have been that much of an issue. Also, by having it this way round, what they've done is they've put the CPU power quite a bit down from the board. I mean, we've got to be talking a good 50mm down from the board. That's where your CPU 8 pin is, and that's the same on both sides. So that's a bit of a cable nightmare, because obviously I've got the cable coming over this side because I'm on a test bench, but if you're in a case, you're going to have the cable coming from the top. Also, just above it, there's a PCI Express 6 pin, which if you want to activate more of the PCI Express slots down here, you need to use that 6 pin. And there's one on the other side as well. So if you consider that you could have a bank of graphics cards, 2 8-pin powers coming across here, then you've got to try and get 2 more 6-pin PCI Expresses up and over the top. You're going to end up having to use extensions, I would have thought, to be able to do that. Then there's another PCI Express power over here. It's just a lot of cabling all over the place. Couldn't they have, you know, maybe put that PCI Express kind of over there somewhere? I know it's all electrical distance and stuff like that, but just to try and make things tidy. Also, where the CPU one's higher than the other, to me it doesn't look balanced at all. It just kind of looks odd, and that's definitely extenuated by the fact that you've only got 4 DIMM slots on one side as well. It doesn't look balanced to me. Now, fan headers, I never use them anyway, especially when I'm doing the reviews, but fan header wise, we've got one here, there's one here, so we've got 1, 2, 3, I'm just looking around for it live, 4, 5, 6, 7, I think that's it, I think that's a lot, I think that's 7, definitely can't see another one. So we've got 7 DIMM slots. So we've got that side of things covered. SATA, there's a 4 SATA 2 and then 2 SATA 3. The red ones are SATA 3. They're vertical. Now you can use the SAS ports down the side, because there are a couple of SAS ports, so you can get SAS extenders if you want. But most people are just going to use the normal SATA ports. It would have been nice again to have had those on the side to make cabling a bit tidier. So that's a bit of a weird one. Now one thing I'm going to zoom you in on, just so that you can see, because I quite like this point. I know we're on an angle, but hopefully that'll focus in. There we go. Right, these little dip switches, so if you've got everything filled up, so we've got loads of graphics cards in, all your memory filled up, these little dip switches are so you can turn each memory channel or graphics card, like PCI Express lane, off. So if you've got something causing a BSOD, blue screen of death, you can, you know, work your way through these one at a time to try and work out what the problem is. Your PCI readout will, or sorry, your post readout will give you a rough idea where the problem is anyway. But this will mean that you can actually go through and work it out. So for say, if it is one of your graphics cards, you can turn the lanes off, and eventually you'll be able to get it to post again, so at least you'll be able to get your rig working. So this side of things is quite nice. We've seen a similar thing to that before on the Rampage 4 anyway. Now moving over a little bit more, I was hoping we'd be able to see it. You can just, but I'm just going to move in. Hopefully we'll be able to see it a bit better this time. Yeah, there we go. Right, that there is your Cmos battery, and it's buried. If I come out, there's no way of getting it to it at all. So that's something we'll talk about in a bit. Now, also, if I can bring us up, come back up to where we were, moving the camera. Another thing I'll say is if we move this and this, I'm hoping that you'll be able to see that the reds are a very different colour. That's red, that's salmon pink. It's the same with the PCI Express slots. It's a salmon pink. I know the lights are going to make things appear worse at this moment in time, but it is salmon pink in all lights. It's salmon pink to my eyes as well. Now I actually asked EVGA about this pink, the RAM slots, the PCI Express slots being different to the SATA, and they said, oh, it's made by different people. I was like, so you know they're salmon pink then? And they said, yes, we know they're salmon pink. It's something we'll fix, you know, with different boards later on. Or we've got a new manufacturer that's going to be able to do them all red. Now, DIMM slots, RAM slot, PCI Express slots, they've got red ones already. RAM slots, again, We know they do red ones anyway. So why did they put pink ones on this? Now, the thing is for me, I wouldn't have been happy. I couldn't have sent a product out knowing what should have been red was salmon pink. Why didn't they just wait or get a manufacturer to do it properly in the first place? It's like they didn't care. It's bloody salmon pink. They should be red. EVGA is a black and red brand. We know they should be red. And they even admitted they know they're pink. And they know that there's a massive difference between the SATA and the pink on this. Now, just to show you how much different the colour is, I'll chuck this into the mix for you, just so that you can get a gauge for the difference between the red and the pink. There's a huge difference. It just looks wrong, and again, it doesn't really feel right at all. Now, so we've got talking about, like I said, we have done the overview before, but we'll skim around some more points. We've got a Firewire port here, 3 internal USB 2s, an internal USB 3, reset button and a power button. The power button lights up red, the reset button lights up white, but flashes as a hard drive light as well. Got a Cmos clear button there, got a BIOS select button there, so you can flick between 2 separate BIOSes. And that's really about all of the points for kind of inside. Like I said, other than the BIOS battery being hidden underneath the heatsink. One thing I will say is this heatsink does get warm. Massively surprised, especially when you're doing intensive CPU testing. I was quite surprised quite how warm this heatsink gets. But that really is about it. Now I want to have a good chinwag with you about performance results and the thoughts of this board and everything like that. So we'll move on to that now. Right then, peeps, we have an immense amount of stuff to try and cover in this conclusion. You'll notice that we've not gone into any kind of performance testing or anything like that, and I'll explain to you why in a minute. Now, we always start with an award, so I'll clear this up. It's not getting one. And I'll kind of explain why. There's lots of things about this board that I don't like. Now, I have spoken to EVGA directly about this, because this is the first one of their boards that I've done personally, and it's also the first of the boards that we've done on the website for quite a while. And the fact that they've sent us the SRX, we've got a couple of 690s from them in at the moment, which I was going to be using on this, but like I said, there's more I need to explain. But I've spoken to them about my thoughts, I've sent them my test results, and they've kind of just gone, do you know what I mean, that's fair enough. We need to take some constructive criticism on board. All your findings and everything, we completely respect that. They've not got funny about it at all, so that's fine. That's quite a good thing, because if they had got funny about it, then the tone of my voice may have been a lot different in this review. We've obviously done the Asus board recently, the Asus Dual Xeon board. So we've got something that we can compare it to straight away, because it's exactly the same kit that we've used, and I mean exactly the same kit, same CPUs, same RAM, same graphics card, same solid state drive, same power supply, everything. We've used everything exactly the same. Now, for those of you out there that are expecting this to be like the next SR2, the next overclocking monster, the next kind of big gaming machine, the next, latest and greatest thing that's going to be breaking world records and stuff, you're sadly mistaken, because this is another thing that I need to clear up nice and early, is Intel kind of changed things, because the SR2 was a great overclocking board, and you could overclock the 1366 Xeons, and you could really crank out some amazing scores on that. With this, Intel have locked overclocking down on the Xeons completely. There's no multiplier adjustments. You can do bits and bobs with the base clock, but moving 3 notches up on the base clock is completely and utterly pointless. It just makes everything unstable. It's just not worth bothering with. So as far as I'm concerned, you can't overclock at all, but that's an Intel processor thing, not the board thing. So now the board performance testing. It's quite simple. The reason why I've not shown you the graphs, the reason why I've not shown you like side-by-side screenshots and stuff like that is because if you want to have a look, you can have a look at all the graphs in the link underneath on Overclock 3D, which is probably the best thing to do. But I can say there was not one test where the SRX beat the Asus. And I mean not one test, ever. There were some points, especially when we're talking about real high-end kind of processing stuff like with Cinebench and POV-Ray and stuff like that, the Asus was significantly in front of the SRX. Now, there's quite a few things, like I said, I don't like about this board, and I need to kind of go through them and explain the points as I go through, and then you'll also see why some of the performance results are going to be different. First of all, and stupidly, the Cmos battery's buried. If you want to change the Cmos battery, and I've never had to change one myself, but if you want to take it out and like to clear the Cmos, and let's face it, there are moments when you do have to, you don't know what's wrong with your board, you need that kind of peace of mind that you've cleared the BIOS properly, so you take the Cmos battery out. This is buried underneath the heatsink, so you have to take the whole heatsink off. So if you consider that, you may end up having to take your whole rig apart to get the board out to be able to do it. That's nuts. Now really, when you think about it, considering that the BIOS battery's buried underneath here, why would they then have the dip switches so that you can isolate certain parts of your board to see, so you can see whether a part's faulty? Because if you're doing that, then you're going to be clearing your BIOS as well to see whether it was a BIOS problem. So the fact that you can't really get to this is a bit fuzzy logic. And I don't really understand it. They could have, you know, not had that little bit of heatsink there, so you could at least have got in there and prized it out. It just doesn't really make a lot of sense. Or maybe put the BIOS battery somewhere else. It just, that I don't like. I don't like the fact that there's only 4 DIMM slots on one side. I'm very much a person where things need to work for me aesthetically as well. And having 8 on one side and 4 on the other, it doesn't, but you know, it doesn't work in my head. It just doesn't look right because it's not balanced. The CPUs don't line up at all. There's about 10-15mm difference on one side. Yeah, aesthetically, it doesn't work for me at all. Having the power cable so far down as well is going to be a nightmare trying to keep things tidy. I know the SRX, the SR2 wasn't exactly the most optically pleasing board in the world, but you'd think, you know, considering they do have to design these boards, they would have got to a point where they were like, right, we've got to make these things look nice. And again, with the pink PCI Express and the pink RAM slots, they knew about it. And they were like, you know, I mean, we'll change them later on, we're going to change the manufacturer. Why not just wait? Why not make sure that they come out red? You're known as a black and red company. It's one of the things that you're famed for. It's part of your kind of your brand design, and yet you've sent out what's meant to be your top of the range board with pink bits, or okay, maybe not pink, salmon coloured PCI Express and RAM slots. It just doesn't make sense. The thing is like I said, this is meant to be their top of the range kind of board that they know people aren't going to buy. They're not trying to make loads of money out of it. It's like their crowning glory. This is what we can do if we put our mind to it stuff. And so far, I've not really found anything that's making me go, wow, this is amazing. And that's the way it should be with something like this. It should literally be a screaming kind of beacon of this is the best thing that we can possibly do, and if you've got an immense amount of money or you just have to have the best, this is what we can do. And there's nothing about it that really makes me think, oh my god, this thing's epic. So it's kind of, it doesn't really make a lot of sense. So we've done that, we've spoken about that. Obviously the performance is just, it's just not there at all. No matter what test we did, what CPUs, there was no point. It got close to the Asus on a few tests, do you know what I mean, and kind of, you know, near it, not far off, never ever beat it. And it was kind of, you know, meh. And when we went into the BIOS, it felt basic at very best, and I do mean at very best. There's no way to change the RAM speed at all. The latest BIOS update allowed you to change RAM timings, which was like, wow, you can change RAM timers with a BIOS update. They've really been working on this for a long time. And to put it into kind of context, with the Asus, when you go into the Asus BIOS, it was, it felt like if Intel had released an unlocked Xeon, the Asus was, every option was already there for it to be able to overclock. The only reason why you couldn't change the multiplier in the Asus was because, you know, you can't with the CPU, but every option was there, all the voltage options were there. It was like, for argument's sake, looking at a BIOS on a X79, P9 X79 Pro. Very, very similar kind of feel to that, but all of the options were there. With this, It just wasn't. It was just like a carcass. And to show you another thing with the, to show you how how much it's unfinished, you can't even run a 690 in it without blue screens and like, you know, boot loops and stuff like that. It just doesn't work, which is one of the reasons why I would have done the 7970 tests anyway, but you can't run a 690 on these yet. There's, the internet is alight with people having problems with these where the BIOS is unfinished. So really for me, and this is one of the reasons why I've not really bothered with doing all the side-by-side tests and stuff like that, because I didn't need to make the video an hour long telling you how bad it was. But that's the way it makes me feel. I think, considering, as I said, this was meant to be their crowning glory board, and they knew that the processors were going to be locked down. I think they should have been making everything else about this board perfect. So they'd gone in and everything was bomb-proof. It was the best electrically it could have possibly been. It looked nice. You know, all the features were there. Everything should have been amazing. It should have quite literally been, oh my God, you know, this is really the best thing that it could have ever possibly been. Whereas the way it's made me feel, now this is, it might not be right, but this is the way it's made me feel. It's almost like they've ripped Intel have ripped the back end out of us. We can't really be bothered with it now. We'll do it anyway because people are expecting it, and we've kind of said we're going to do it anyway, but we won't bother, you know, making it right. We'll just, you know, let the idiots that are going to buy it and, you know, have done with it. And essentially, I'm not going to say if you wanted something like, you know, the best gaming rig that you could possibly have, you'd be better off buying, and I'll say an EVGA X79 board, but you can use any X79 board. You'd be better off getting an EVGA X79 board, overclocking the bejesus out of your 3960X, and then basically running with it like that, because as far as games are concerned, and 90% of the programs that are out there, you'd be better off. Me, for one, I've had kind of, you know, visions of using a dual Xeon board, but Vegas doesn't, because I use Vegas in my videos. Vegas doesn't utilise all the cores and threads that well. It actually prefers kind of core speed, and it works better that way, although it still don't max my CPU out. And that's going to be the same for everybody else. The only reason why you'd want this would be for a workstation, so people doing 3D editing, you know, massive kind of encoding and video editing and Photoshop and kind of 3D modeling, that kind of stuff. Really, really intensive multiple thread programs. But the problem is, when you're talking about programs like that, you're kind of talking people that are going to want a workstation. Now, if you're building a workstation, why would you spend £500 on a motherboard when Asus have got one out that's 350 quid, looks better, performs better, is laid out better, will fit in more cases, you can run your memory faster, basically it's just an all-round better board. And if you're not really worried about aesthetics, why wouldn't you be running like a dedicated workstation board or a server board, which will do exactly the same things again, but just not look pretty, and it will cost you about 200, maybe £250. So when you consider that the SRX could be twice the price of a board that will do exactly the same things, it's kind of, you know, I can't honestly see. Now, like I said, I've spoken to EVGA specifically about my thoughts on this. I can't see the point in this board. I really don't, because like I said, if you're not worried about aesthetics, then you might as well just buy a server or a workstation board. It will do exactly the same thing. If you're worried about aesthetics, then you may as well buy the Asus board, and it's still cheaper. That's what I mean. It's kind of one of those things that there was nothing for me that I could personally find that made me think that would be the reason why you would buy the SRX over the competition. It's just not there. They basically need to go back to the drawing board with it. The BIOS needs fixing. It should never have been released with the BIOS this bad. Other manufacturers do bring BIOSes out, and they're a bit iffy at the start, but within a couple of weeks or so, they've got them fixed, and, you know, things are running better. With this, it's one of the things where you've not had an Intel kind of NDA and a release to make sure that you had the boards ready for in time. They should have just postponed the release and made sure it was all airtight, especially when you're kind of sending it to, you know, reviewers and stuff like that. Things need to be right. Again, with the slots, if they knew it was going to be pink and you've got a black and red theme, you know, brand theme, postpone the release and make sure that you send it out with red slots, and then he saw them. Make sure you send it out with red slots. Salmon pink, really? I mean, come on. There's just so many little things with this that it's just not right, and it feels rushed. It feels unfinished. This honestly has left me feeling like I was dealing with a board that wasn't due out for another 2, 3, 4 months, and it was an early sample that's been sent. Been there, done that. I've had samples come through before that, you know, people have sent me to have a play with, and the slots have been completely different colours from the way they've been released, you know, were meant to have been released in the end. You get a board that, you know, is going to go out black and red in the end, and I've got it with bloody like white slots, you know, sky blue slots, whatever. It's just because they've just done, you know, some electrical samples just to pump through so that, you know, people can test them. And that's really the way it's left me felt, kind of disappointed, kind of deflated. It's definitely been massively overhyped. I know Intel have literally ripped the back end out of what this board could have been by locking the overclocking down. But honestly, EVGA, considering that you knew this, you should have been working 10 times harder, making sure that everything else was perfect. It's just, for workstation work, which is where it's going to be, and that type of stuff, it's not good enough performance-wise, and it's overpriced. So, strange one, very, very strange one. And like I said, I would like to thank EVGA for sending me the sample early in the first place. And the fact that we've got one, I still don't think there's any proper reviews out there of the board yet. And I've obviously still got 690s to do, which I'm very much looking forward to. But we've tested it, and as I've said, I'm not beating them up because I've already spoken to them about this, like specifically spoken to them about this, and they know where I'm going with the review, and they've said we've got to take these criticisms online. They're going to go away, fix some of the BIOS problems. They've also said that they may even relook at the price, considering that, you know, from the thoughts that I've passed across, they may have to change the price because they can see now that it's, you know, massively, massively overpriced compared to some of the other stuff, especially when you consider that you could have a board that, all right, might not look as nice, but, well, if you like pink, but it's twice the price of some of the other boards that I've looked at. It's just one of those things where they know about it, I've warned them, they know the review was not going to be nice. But that's it. So for all of those of you out there that always say that we always do the, you know, like the really nice stuff on the channel, I expected this to be really nice, which is why I was ready to put so much time in it, and we were going to do loads with this. But the performance has just not been there. It's just, as far as I'm concerned, it's not good enough. And now I'm going to strip this rig down, and I'm going to move on to something that's going to cheer me up, and, you know, I'm actually going to enjoy reviewing, because the difference is when something's really good, the words flow out, it's really easy, it's nice to talk about it, it's nice to big the product up. When it's not good, it's so difficult not to just go in for the kill and kind of make it sound like you hate it. But this should have been better. So yeah, I am disappointed. But I'm going to leave it here because I know I've been rambling on for quite a while now. But this is Tiny Tom Logan with a disappointed face on with the EVGA SRX review for you, out.